I'm Dr. Pedram Shojai with our final look into the microbiome here in the Interconnected series. Today, we roll straight into solutions for you. Learning this information is transformative only if you apply it in your life. Connecting to the microbiome has been an amazing journey. We discovered how our gut has such a complex source of health, immunity, and curing capabilities. Let's pull together all of the scientific wisdom that's been shared to help guide us through reviving our inner vitality, rejuvenating our bodies, and reinventing our lives. Let's get into it.
I'm so excited that people are starting to recognize even the word microbiome, but even more excited about this documentary that people are going to have access to the latest research on how important this is and get the knowledge to know that they need to start looking at it. I think it's going to dramatically change the direction of health in our country.
There's some really important things you need to do to tend your inner garden, because you have an inner garden and it requires tending. One is to feed it the right stuff, which is fiber. So a lot of plant-rich foods, nuts and seeds and vegetables, some whole grains and beans. These are all providing the nutrients for the bacteria to grow and flourish. Stop feeding them sugar. Stop feeding them starch. Stop feeding them processed food. They do not do well. Stop feeding them refined oils. Eat good fats. All these play a huge role in cultivating the great inner garden.
And with the fermented vegetables, every single day, a tablespoon or two of a different family of fermented vegetables of the 5 or 6 that you've got in your refrigerator, because you're inoculating with the good guys. You're just reinstating more good guys in there every single day. That is the primary thing that you can do to ensure a long and healthy microbiome.
So often we're thinking of what we need to eat, and then we complain if we get bloated. But I often say it's not you that's bloated, it's the bacteria that gave off that gas. So they're not happy with what you ate, or there's a reason why that they gave off that hydrogen or methane gas or whatever gas it was. So basically prebiotics is a fancy word for fiber. Prebiotic is the pre to the pro. So it's giving the bacteria food, and often the best source is fruits and vegetables. Another one might be some of the soluble and insoluble fibers that you can't get from fruits and vegetables, like psyllium husk, oat bran. But my favorites are just fruits and vegetables, and eating a lot of the skin, leaving the skin on, like oranges, for example, the bioflavonoids, leaving the rind on and not peeling everything, and making it all perfect.
The microbiome for us has to be in balance, and that balance is not something that's innate, but we need to work on it. And the way we work on it is through diet and lifestyle. And that lifestyle means to minimize antibiotics. It's also to eat healthy foods that are high in fiber and prebiotics. And for when we have those illnesses, a probiotic has its place in maintaining our own flora, which is important for health. And there's been many studies and meta-analyses on both probiotics, or the foods that feed us, or prebiotics, to maintain a healthy microbiome, and those studies and even meta-analyses have been shown to have important health outcomes.
There are 3 components to building a healthy microbiome. The first comes from my friends in England, Drs. Michael Ash and Anthony Haynes. They call it stewed apples. We call it applesauce, right? You take 4 apples, dice them, throw the seeds away, so you core them to get the seeds out of there, wash the apples, always organic if you can, wash them first, and slice them, put them in a pot, add water 1/3 the height of the apples, so depending on the size of the pot and all that, about 1/3 water, add a little cinnamon in there, a couple of raisins if you want, turn it on high, bring it to a boil. In about 5 minutes you take a look, and when you see a shine on the skin of the apples, you're done. It's done. Turn it off. Have a couple tablespoons of applesauce twice a day. When you see the shine on the skin, you've released the pectin from the apples. Pectin increases a substance in our guts called intestinal alkaline phosphatase, IAP. IAP protects your body and it doesn't allow the LPS, the toxic bacteria, from getting into the bloodstream. IAP grabs LPS and escorts it out with the bowel movements. IAP stimulates the genes to heal intestinal permeability. IAP stimulates the good bacteria to colonize and rebuild. This is why an apple a day keeps the doctor away. This is why, because it really works, and there's lots of science on this now.
A big part of this is that I've been told, over and over again, is antibiotic use. I mean, every time you get a cold, you get an antibiotic. There's antibiotics in the meat in particular, and then a lot of people are talking about glyphosate and some of the pesticides that have antibiotic kind of qualities that might be leading to some of this, right? What's your take on this?
I think eating a healthy, balanced diet is important. Eating more of a Mediterranean diet as opposed to a Western diet would be important. Avoiding antibiotics, if possible. Obviously, for very severe infections, we should take antibiotics, but maybe casual or recreational use of antibiotics should be limited. And living a healthy lifestyle, exercise, and just positive attitude have been shown to correlate with both microbial diversity and health.
Avoid things that are gut-busting drugs, antibiotics, acid blockers, anti-inflammatories, steroids, hormones, aspirin. These are all damaging your gut. Make sure you deal with stress, because your microbiome listens to your thoughts, literally changing the flora in your gut. So things like meditation, very powerful. And also doing things to help those gut bacteria work better. You might want to take probiotics, you might need enzymes, you might need to reset your gut a little bit. But learning how to tend your garden is really important. Taking prebiotic and probiotic foods is critical. Prebiotics are starches that you can't digest, but that the bacteria thrive on. Things like plantains and things like konjac root, which is a Japanese tuber that you can get shiitake noodles. There's all sorts of things you can use that way. Even potatoes that are cooked and cooled, or rice that is cooked and cooled, forms more of a resistant starch that your bacteria love.
I would say don't eat too much. I think often we hear so much about macros and carbs and protein and fat, but I find intermittent fasting and sometimes taking a break and letting the gut just do its thing and detox and giving it a break to regenerate can actually be very beneficial. Sometimes I find we're snacking and we've been told to snack and have small meals all day. We never go into a truly fasting state, and I think fasting is very important for longevity and health.
Doctors are going to have to start thinking about what's going on with the patient's microbiome as anything comes up, whether it's a migraine headache or a skin rash or autoimmune diseases or neurological diseases. Every patient, we should at least be checking in. Is that patient's microbiome? And I'm pointing to the gut, but it's really in the sinuses and the gums, skin, lungs. Like, we have microbiome everywhere. So really thinking what is going on with this person's microbiome as we're evaluating, well, how can we really help this patient?
The most important step is actually understanding and realizing that the microbiome plays such a large role in our overall health, that what I eat could affect my mood next week, or what I eat today, if I continue to eat like this, could give me a risk for Alzheimer's disease. Or if I don't sleep, I might have a risk that's higher for Parkinson's disease.
I eat very carefully. I eat food that I know is going to feed my healthy microbiome and avoid the things that I know are going to disrupt it. And then I meditate every day, because stress is such a big impact on what the bacteria especially do. I take probiotics to build up the bacteria that I want to have there. And then I take a lot of immune system support. So much of the immune system is in the gut. It's really important to keep our immune system strong and healthy.
I think the top recommendation I will make to patients to help improve their microbiome is to eat a fermented food every single day. Not to take a probiotic necessarily, but to eat something that's different in color. So for example, having this morning I had pickled onions, which is more a purple color, right? Or having pickled beets, or sauerkraut, or kimchi, or kombucha, or even organic whole yogurt, which is fermented dairy, or kefir. So many different varieties of fermented foods that can really help increase diversity, and there's research backing that up. So that's my top list, and often they're delicious. People just don't know, like they just weren't trained. As a kid, we don't give pickled vegetables to kids, whereas in my culture, we always had pickled cucumbers. It's a pretty common thing to eat with your food, and often we eat yogurt with foods.
You alternate the fermented vegetables every day. You do a different one. So you're inoculating with different strains of bacteria. Because once again, it's the diversity of the microbiome that makes you stronger and more able to protect the lining of your gut. When it tears, it's the gateway into the development of autoimmune diseases.
So these are just simple things you take probiotic foods like the fermented food, sauerkraut. I read a study where Polish women have very low rates of breast cancer in Poland. They ate 30 pounds of sauerkraut a year. They moved to America, same women get same rates of breast cancer as everybody else, and they don't eat their sauerkraut here. So not to say you should eat 30 pounds of sauerkraut, but it's a little bit, it's a good idea.
It's almost like a parallel. You see like the influencer marketing and top-down hierarchy. It's like, I'm going to eat what Khloe Kardashian eats, versus like almost like the blockchain model of very individualized understanding. And so there's a paradigm shift. I'd love for you to speak to that.
There really is a paradigm shift of, there is no one right diet. There's, don't follow the celebrity diet. Don't follow the, what the latest trend is that it's a whole trend of personalization, the whole paradigm that even in medicine, we used to say one drug for everybody, right? Everybody with high blood pressure should all take this drug. We now know that that's not the case. That drug might work for one person, not another person. Same thing with diet. That diet's going to be great, or that food even is going to be great for one person, not another person. So we talk about personalized medicine, we talk about personalized diet. I think that's really the big shift, is that the recognition that we're all individuals, we're all extremely unique in every aspect. We're unique genetically, we grew up in a unique environment, we have unique microbiomes. There is nobody on this planet that is like you.
What should we be doing? Eating a diet that most promotes all of the healthy components of a good microbiome. We should be avoiding some of the harmful chemicals when we can that do undue harm, things like antibiotics when we don't need them. We should be also thinking about what are the sources from which our microbiome replenishes itself. What are the kinds of outside organisms that we want to encourage back into a system that has become depleted? And those are things that we need to think a little bit more about, but it might mean closer association with our parents early in life, maybe more skin contact in those early days when things really matter, when the system is assembling, when we know that much of what the future holds for the microbiome is being established in those early days. Those are days when perhaps we ought to have more physical contact with our parents, maybe more contact with the natural environment that has those sources of good organisms. There's sorts of things like that some societies probably would tell us they knew already. We just weren't listening or thinking about it hard enough or paying attention on an ongoing basis.
And we used to think that inside the womb was sterile. It turns out there are even probiotics growing inside the baby in the womb. It's a part of who we are. So it starts out at birth. And then what you do as a child is you crawl around on the floor. And that's a good thing. Unless you come in wearing shoes that are tracking in rubber, petroleum, pesticides, and God knows what from the city where you live. You probably don't want to be rolling around in that stuff. So put the kids in the backyard and don't spray Roundup and glyphosate on your backyard. Put them in the garden, let them get dirty. And you might consider feeding them probiotics. Feed them lots of vegetables, just like you want to do for you. And avoid antibiotics unless it's really, really important. My kids who are 8 and 11, one of them has had antibiotics once. The other one has never had them. And he had it for an infection that was spreading in his leg that was life-threatening. Done. Not a problem. Thank you, science. But after that, lots of prebiotics, lots of probiotics, and he's perfectly healthy. But I compare that to myself. I had sinus infections all the time as a kid, so I just took antibiotics every month for years because that's what doctors said to do, every time disabling my gut. I wish I hadn't have done that.
I would say if you're buying organic veggies, don't scrub them, and don't wash everything, and don't, take the skin off. Get some of that good quality soil that's on there, especially if you've grown it yourself and you know what's in there. If you absolutely have no idea, then no, that's risky.
Moderate exercise is the key. Intensive exercise, what we call anaerobic exercise, is detrimental to the microbiome. It can cause more intestinal permeability.
Understanding those things is probably the first key step. Things happen in life. We're human beings. We're exposed to stuff all the time. It's not all purposeful. Stuff happens on accident, things you can't control. And that's just the nature of being a human on Earth. So all things are not preventable because things just happen. I mean, we could have an earthquake right now and we could be exposed to chemicals that from the walls breaking as a result of that. We can't help that.
Think of it like a cornfield monocrop versus a rainforest. You want a rainforest in your gut, not a cornfield monocrop, because they're much more susceptible to disruption, to insult. If one plant dies in the rainforest, so what? If the corn plant dies, you're done.
Someone smart once said to me, don't let perfect be the enemy of really good. And I think there's some broad brushstrokes around nutrition that aren't that mysterious. You see all these articles in the New York Times or wherever that nutrition is a mystery and no one agrees. And I just don't think that's true. We know that refined sugar, refined flours, processed foods, we know that these are toxic inputs to the body. And so a lot of it is about removing them.
So knowing what you know now, what advice or recommendations can you give the viewers here in how to maintain a healthy microbiome?
A healthy microbiome, a lot of it's common sense. Good diet, whole foods, whole grains, high fiber, low food additives. There are a lot of antibacterial substances in processed foods that are having an effect on the microbiome. We now know that. I would minimize use of antibiotics. If a doctor prescribes antibiotics, to ask them, is it really necessary? Do I need this or can I get by without it? There's a lot of use of antibiotics that is unnecessary. The CDC estimates that a third of all antibiotic use is unnecessary. Based on the statistics in Sweden, I think it's 2/3. So it's really, it's a big number. Another area in which the microbiome is perturbed is by being born by cesarean section. And the rates of the WHO suggests that the rates of C-section should be about 15%. In the US, it's about 30%. In some countries, it's 50%. So in some countries, C-section has become the normal way to be born now. And that has an effect on the microbiome. Our studies have shown we can detect an effect a year after birth.
In maintaining a healthy microbiome through your entire life, the primary concept is diversity. Diversity of the prebiotics to feed the microbiome. Here's how important feeding the microbiome is. There is a fatty acid that's produced in your intestines called butyrate. Fastest growing cells in the body, inside lining of the gut. Every 3 to 5 days you have a whole new lining to your gut. The fuel to build those new cells is butyrate or butyric acid, same thing.
The right questions are, what are you eating every day? What medications have you taken over the course of your lifetime? Were you born C-section or vaginally? Because we know that has long-term implications. When did your symptoms, whatever they may be, start, and what was happening in the context of your life at that time? It's asking these questions and looking at the whole person, and then that allows you to put the pieces together.
The best data that we have on biome restoration, I think, is to eat the hugest variety of plants, of fruits and vegetables that you can. Now, all those aren't going to be local, but do it locally as much as you can. Go to farmers markets, buy stuff from your local farmers because that is going to be the local biome. Use honey from local farmers if you can. It's very difficult in our day and age because you go to the grocery store and stuff is coming from all over the world, right? So I admit that it's somewhat impractical to try to only eat local, but to be as much of a locavore as you can, I believe is the way to go.
If we live our lives as good as we can, as best as we can, most of the time, then we hope that we've built that resilience into our system and that we be able to weather the storm when it comes. You know, and it's your birthday and, you know, you want to have a piece of cake. It's not the end of the world. You know, that piece of cake isn't going to destroy your microbiome forever. We want to enjoy life and live life too.
We have to move away from this idea of being able to hack our microbiome. It's not hackable. You can't out-hack bacteria. So you have to, I mean, I get accused of wanting everybody to go back to the cave. I don't think we have to go back to the cave. And if we do, we can certainly take our phones with us. But we have to go back we have to look at how we got here. And this idea that there is a pill to fix this, that I hear every day in my practice, somebody says to me, yeah, I took an antibiotic. I know you didn't want me to take it, but I had a bad sinus infection. But it's okay because I took a probiotic. And then I explained to them, so you took an antibiotic, you basically took the plug out of the bath and you drained out all the bath water. And then you took a probiotic, so good for you. You took a cup of water and put it back into the bathtub. So your bath is not full.
There's a number of supplements on the market. There's a number of medications on the market. And we really don't want to take the time to change because change is really a difficult thing to do. And so the true heroes of this journey that we're on are the people who take it on themselves to do what it takes to get themselves better. And they're the people that I admire because they are strong despite adversity.
In this healing journey, I found out that, well, I'm basically deficient in most all nutrients, and it's because I've been eating the same foods all day, every day, cutting out major food groups. So in healing my gut, I really had to pay attention with, you know, getting different items at the grocery store that I didn't get the week before, and just kind of changing up my routine so that I'm getting all the nutrients I need. It also took adding healthy fats back into my diet, which was huge. For years, I had believed that fats were bad. Fats were going to make me fat. But in fact, it was the opposite. Fats reduce inflammation, and they really helped me heal my intestinal problems and ultimately my entire body. Every single year, now that my body is rebalanced, to make sure I stay that way, I get multiple tests done. I have a food intolerance test, a nutrient panel, heavy metal toxicity test, as well as a stool exam.
And thankfully, I found meditation and it changed everything. It cured my insomnia on the first day of my first class. I stopped going gray. I'm a decade older now than I was when I started, and I'm not gray. I didn't get sick for 8.5 years after learning to meditate. And so finally I thought, why does everybody not do this? I would meditate every day, twice a day. I would exercise, not every day, but as much as possible. I would take my supplements, and I would make this amazing smoothie. And if I did all of those things, then my day was almost guaranteed to be great. If I missed any one of those pieces, I would be crying and a total emotional wreck by 2 p.m.
I start researching. I look online, and this is back when you didn't like search gut health or these symptoms and stuff would come up. Like this was before that. And so I look online and I start to discover some possible connections to these symptoms and my gut. So I was like, okay, let's just focus on the gut. And so I started taking probiotics, and it helped. But I'm an herbalist, I'm a purist. I asked myself, you know, how did my ancestors get probiotics? If these are essential, you know, what did they do? They didn't take pills that were made in a laboratory. And so that's when I discovered fermented foods. You know, that's the whole food version of probiotics.
What would you say to someone who has a lot of these symptoms and is currently self-diagnosing because the doctors threw their arms up and said, we don't know what's wrong with you? What advice would you give them?
I would give a person who's suffering and trying to self-diagnose to do their best to research practitioners who are knowledgeable, read reviews, really get a good referral source. Because I feel that if you get one good referral source, it could lead you to a plethora of good practitioners, because typically they refer to another good practitioner. So I would say it's important that you're taking action and trying to find another way, but really you need to make sure that you're not doing anything harmful, because some of these diets can be harmful on other levels.
We published data about 4 years ago. We looked at a cohort of 12 patients with inflammatory bowel disease with a combination of ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. And these are patients with pretty severe disease. More than half of them had had surgical resections. Most of them were on pretty serious medication. And we looked at the effects of a low complex carbohydrate diet. We found that it took on average about 60 days for people to find meaningful change, to experience meaningful change in their symptoms. For some people, it took as long as 3 or 4 months. Some people noticed improvement in 2 or 3 days, but average was about 2 months. Most of the patients were able to get off medication. We saw endoscopic healing, which is our gold standard. So not just people describing that they were feeling better, that they were having less bloody diarrhea and abdominal pain, etc. But when I scoped them, I could actually see the ulceration healing.
And so sometimes it has to take a place of desperation where one's health is in jeopardy to understand that change is possible and that each person can find the strength to go through it. And I've met these people and they inspire me every day. The nutrition environment is a huge challenge, especially for Americans. It may be easier in other countries of the world to follow the principles of the anti-inflammatory diet, but it's difficult here.
There's a category of foods that feed the good bacteria in your gut called prebiotics. One of the dangers of going gluten-free is that 78% of the prebiotic in the Western diet comes from wheat. Not everything about wheat is bad for you. So when you take wheat out of your diet, you lose 78% of the prebiotics that have been feeding your good bacteria. In wheat, they're called arabinoxylans. When you lose 78% of the food that your bacteria has been depending on, the bacteria start to die. And then the bad guys can rear their ugly heads. Gluten-free foods do not have prebiotic qualities. So you have to replenish the prebiotics in your diet. How do you do that? Mrs. Patient, when you go shopping and buying vegetables, always organic if you can, buy a couple of each of the root vegetables. Get rutabaga, turnips, parsnips, sweet potatoes, carrots, not so much white potatoes for other reasons, but get all the root vegetables that they've got available. And you have one root vegetable a day as one of your meals, as part of one of your meals. And then you go to Google and you type in list of prebiotic foods. Here comes the list. And you have 2 from that list every day. It might be a banana. It might be artichokes. It could be asparagus. There are many foods on the everyday foods that we eat that are prebiotics. So you have 1 root vegetable every day, and then 2 of the list of other prebiotic foods every day. That way, you're feeding the good bacteria in your gut. That's number 2. Number 3, go to Whole Foods or the natural food store and buy 5 different types of fermented vegetables. Not pasteurized, as long as they're not pasteurized. So fermented vegetables, get sauerkraut, get kimchi, a couple different flavors of kimchi, get fermented beets, get curry flavor, just get a bunch of different types. Every day you have a forkful of one of those types and you alternate it, because when vegetables ferment, they produce hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different families of prebiotic bacteria that are good for you. Many people have heard sauerkraut's good for you. This is why. But you don't want to eat just sauerkraut. You want to alter it because each of the vegetables, when they ferment, produces different families of bacteria. And once again, it's the diversity of the microbiome that's going to make a difference. So you want a diversity of inoculation of good bacteria from fermented vegetables.
The other thing we found is that the people who interpreted a low complex carbohydrate diet as I'm going to not have gluten and sugar, but I'm going to have bacon and eggs for breakfast, and I'm going to have a chicken patty for lunch, and then I'm going to have steak with a little broccoli for dinner, really didn't do well. Those were not the patients who had endoscopic healing those were not the patients who were able to get off their medication. It was really the patients who adhered to this idea of 6 to 8 cups of leafy green vegetables a day and who were primarily plant-based with the option of a little healthy animal protein. But the people who were consuming large amounts of indigestible plant fiber were the ones who were really improving. And we saw that in the published data. We see it over and over and over again in our practice. My colleague, Terry Walls, my friend and colleague who's written the Walls Protocol, has found the same thing in her cohort of patients with MS, that there is a critical amount of plant material that people need to be eating in an unadulterated state, not lentil chips, but lentils, in an unprocessed state of indigestible plant fiber to really turn things around, whether you're talking about the mitochondrial effects or the microbial effects. That's really essential. And so, I try to make it sexier for people, but at the end of the day, eat more vegetables.
It's not about willpower, or not only about willpower, actually. It's about being aware of one's own biology. And when you start to feel better, and when you start to see the difference that making dietary changes and lifestyle changes can exact, people don't turn back from that. And that is the motivation. It doesn't necessarily come down to willpower. And what we do, me as a practitioner in my training, is to help to facilitate the changes in ways that might make sense to that person's life.
If someone feels like, oh, yeah, I'm so sick, what are the first 10 yards they got to run, right? Like, what do they got to do to just start feeling better?
Only way you can feel better is to take control of your own health. You have to start feeling you have a control. You become CEO of your own health. Understand what is going on. And the first thing I always say is, like, personally, I was trying to lose weight and I was pre-diabetic. And everyone gave me the advice. All I had to do was cut down all the carbs, start eating healthy. That meant start eating the healthy food, spinach and oats and avocado. And I started doing that. First couple of months, I lost some weight and my blood glucose came down. Guess what happened? 6 months later, my weight was going up and my blood glucose started going up again. It turns out what I was doing was actually causing more inflammation in my body. And the things that I needed to minimize was spinach, oats, avocado, lentil, legumes, tofu, everything that I thought was eating healthy turned out was unhealthy for me right now. And when I started to change my diet, started eating more complex carbohydrate, not only my weight came down, in fact, my blood glucose came down. After 4 or 5 months, I retested. Guess what happened? I changed my diet again. Now I needed to be eating a little bit. I can eat more spinach. I can eat more avocado. I can eat more oats. And the body is constantly changing. So think of your body as a ecosystem, and when you're eating certain foods, it's feeding certain organisms and they're producing certain things. And when you're not eating certain foods, it's really starving some set of organisms. So think of it like a seesaw. And you start to change your diet, it starts to balance, and if you don't stop, it's going to go back imbalance again. And you have to constantly tune your body. We tune our car once a year, right? And think our car is not even complex. This complex human body needs to be constantly tuned, and we have to check and recheck every 3 or 4 months so your body is constantly working at its optimal pace.
My life can be very stressful. I'm all over the world, traveling, lecturing, I'm seeing patients, having to think really hard, and I think it is really important to be able to get off the grid and go someplace, even if it's just for a few hours, and reconnect really with the planet. It's the whole planet. So I think of myself as being a kind of symbiotic organism. I have this microbiome, and I'm also human, but I'm this superorganism. And that organism is interchanging itself with the environment around me.
The key observation is that it's not in the food, it's in the combination of the food and your biology put together. So it's not like there is a certain food that is great all by itself and it's great for everybody. And there's no food that is, lousy for one and lousy for everybody, right? It's, an apple could be great for you, it could be bad for me. Spinach could be great for me and bad for you, right? And so those kinds of combinations is something that you cannot just generalize and say one size fits all.
When I go walk in the woods, I'm taking in the microbes that are in the woods. I'm taking in the chemicals released by the microbes in the woods, and that changes me, I believe, for the better.
You're talking about getting an inoculation of beneficial bacteria by walking.
It's not just bacteria that I get when I hike, there's viruses as well, and there's fungi. A lot of times people think about mold as being a bad thing, but mold is a huge part of the growth, the life of this planet. So I want the mold. I want to be exposed to it. When I go walking in the deep woods like I was today, I can smell that mold and I like it.
Yes, it's complicated, but I think you need to analyze the data that comes out of your biology, and only then will you be able to recognize exactly what is going on in your body and what will take it in the right direction.
I'd say the top 5 things that we would do to nurture the microbiome. 1, avoid junk food. 2, treat yourself well, exercise, rest. 3, eat well. Eat well enough, don't overeat. Eat mainly plants, and then eat organic when you can. And 4 would be avoid antibiotics at all costs. And then 5 is just live well, be well, and think about your biome.
There's a lot of sage wisdom from our experts in that last segment. And although there's no one-size-fits-all to health, there seem to be some broad strokes to follow. And that's really the key. Again, health and vitality are much more related to how we live than what we take once in a while. You simply can't reverse 23 hours of momentum in one direction with a few pills or procedures. That's how we got into this mess. Let's review some key concepts from this segment. The microbiome connects us all. The sinuses, skin, lungs, brain, our entire body holds our microbiome. You get a whole new gut lining in 3 to 5 days. Intensive exercise can actually damage the microbiome. Become the CEO of your own health. On average, it'll take 60 days to experience meaningful change, so be patient with it. What to eat? Eat a fermented food daily. Eat colored vegetables with every meal, and also eat 6 to 8 cups of leafy green vegetables a day. We've got a comprehensive list of prebiotic and probiotic foods in the Interconnected Companion Guide, which you get when you invest in the series. Our team is on a mission to eradicate chronic disease by getting this life-saving information into as many hands as possible. So if you're interested in bringing the power of natural medicines into your life, click on the link below and let's get you the complete Interconnected documentary series. Plus, the proceeds from your purchase will help us share this information with the world and help more people. Medicine is broken, but it doesn't have to be this way. It's time to take your health into your own hands and tap into the currency of life by learning how to bolster your microbiome. Hit the link below. This is your last chance to qualify for the launch period discount. Okay, back to the episode. The microbiome connects us to an attainable, healthy body and to hope after years of mysterious illnesses and failed treatments. This is scientifically proven, and we've seen clear evidence in this series. So what's holding us back? You are what you eat. This isn't new. So why is this not the main topic, the opening line for all doctors' visits, in all healthcare promotions, at all family dinner discussions? Is it a lack of understanding? Is it laziness, resistance to change, or the fact that the conventional medical system is just such a big business? Is the problem with us? We can't focus on self-care because we just want a quick fix, a quick pill for everything? There are many different answers to those questions. And truly, it's as important to understand how we got here as it is important to understand how we get out and get healthy. We need to start a new conversation about feeding and caring for our microbiomes, a conversation about health and healing. And the reality is, education is the way out. It's the new model, and the best way to educate and provoke change is to lead by example. Here are some ideas from the men and women who are doing just that.
Chronic disease is crushing us. It is so common. In the medical system, we're really good at treating acute disease. If you get hit by a bus, definitely take you to the hospital. They're going to do a wonderful job of, sewing you back up and getting you back out there. But with chronic disease, we just don't have the tools, the appropriate tools. What we do have are symptom control.
It's amazing to see people who will struggle with health challenges for 5, 10, 15, sometimes 20 years. And you feel like you're going to be stuck like this forever. Like there's nothing you're going to be able to do to get better. Maybe it's acid reflux, maybe it's irritable bowel syndrome, maybe it's something like inflammatory bowel disease or a thyroid condition, and you just feel like you're going downhill and you feel like you're just going down a hole and getting deeper and deeper within it, and you're not going to be able to crawl out of it.
So you go to your doctor when you have a headache, and your doctor gives you a painkiller. So we get symptom control, and you feel good for a while, but then the headache comes back. So if you just do symptom control and you don't identify those underlying factors, it's going to keep progressing. And then at some point, boom, you're going to meet the criteria for a disease. Now you have a disease. So your blood sugar may have been slowly rising for many, many years. And then when you reach that magical number, now you've suddenly caught diabetes. It's taken years to develop. So we need to really go back. And then what we do in our medical system is we start using very expensive drugs. So the drugs for symptom control, as the disease progresses, gets more and more expensive. And we spend billions of dollars every year on very expensive drugs, and their sole purpose is to control symptoms.
When we make the right changes, sometimes you'll see transformations in just a few days. I know for me, within 3 days, my irritable bowel syndrome that I had for almost a decade went away. And this was something I tried every over-the-counter treatment for. I even tried prescription medications for. And, the medications weren't able to heal me the way that my own body was able to heal once I removed the triggers that were causing it to be out of balance.
As a matter of fact, every single chronic disease that they even have a drug for, at best, it suppresses the symptom and it never understands what is the root cause of the diseases, and it never worries about how do we cure them, because there is no money in cure. Our healthcare system has become like an organism. The survival of the organism is all they care about, and the stakeholders in the system, which is not the patient for sure, is really designed to keep people sick.
In the days of old, medicine was happening in a community environment where people knew each other, and therefore there was a trust and a knowing between the patient and the doctor and the rest of the community. When that's separated out, where you see different doctors and they all have their own silo, you can't build that kind of trust, and so you have to build a payment mechanism into it.
Think about it. Your doctor only gets paid when you are sick. When you go there, that's the only time they get paid. Even the pharmaceutical companies, they love chronic diseases. That means a subscription business for them. A couple of years ago, a CEO of a pharmaceutical company went on an earnings call, and he said, the best drugs that we develop are the drugs that people have to take for the rest of their life. Imagine what he's saying. The best drugs are the ones that don't cure anything.
The villain in the healthcare system is, well, I think the current insurance model, the lack of recognition of what we're doing and, allowing for compensation of the work that we're doing in a way that is sufficient to allow us to engage in our livelihood. I mean, the insurance model, but, who's the villain there? I mean, what about the drug companies? There's an interrelationship between government regulation and the insurance model and the drug industry. It's a disease care model that feeds on each other.
From a business model, that's the ideal model, is a person with a disease that's going to last a long time. The disease isn't going to kill them. They're going to live for many years, and you have to manage it. So they're always going to come back to see you. And it is a great for business model. It's not great for, obviously, the person, the patient, to have to live with that, and your own conscience to live with that. And as a doctor, I think that we never went into medicine to just manage disease. We went into medicine to actually heal people and reverse that disease.
A lot of people say that there's this healthcare debate happening in Washington, and I would argue that it's a healthcare finance debate. Like, who pays the bill isn't really going to resolve healthcare. So can we talk about this third-party payer system and this intermediation that has really kind of distorted the transaction, of the purity of the transaction?
So what you've seen is that in the 1970s, you saw a massive increase in the sort of ecosystem of medicine that didn't do anything to deliver on the care. So managers in hospitals, the third-party payer system, the insurance system, all growing but not actually creating any health at all. And that led to a point where in the 80s and 90s, cost just starts going up on almost an exponential trajectory. And so when I came into it, what I saw is that there's a lot of people who aren't really doing anything. On one hand, you have, patients who are operating in an opaque system that they not only can't understand, but it's not designed for them to understand. They're designed to be a pawn in the system, and they don't understand what anything costs. And then on the other side, you've got doctors who are sort of a pawn in the system too. They don't know what anything costs, and they're just doing their best to try and get people well.
The World Health Organization consistently every year ranks the United States number 1 or 2 in the world for highest quality technological medicine. And consistently, we're ranked in the bottom 5 every year of 53 industrialized countries, the bottom 5 for effects of healthcare. Number 1 in technology, and at the bottom in healthcare results. Because it's not healthcare, it's crisis care.
As a doctor, you get paid in a fee-for-service model, for sure, you get paid for the number of patients you see. So, it's much easier just to write a prescription, send the patient out, write another prescription, send them out. If you really want to take the time and address what's really going on in the patient, what the root cause is, and start working with them on making those lifestyle changes and what's going to really work for them, it takes a lot longer. And the whole system, the financial system, is not set up for that.
And we need crisis care. This is not to say anything against crisis care. However, that's not healthcare. We need a crisis care doctor on our team, always for the family, but we also need healthcare doctors. Functional medicine doctors are a really good example of that.
Ultimately, what we've seen is extreme growth in hospitals and insurance and in the pharmaceutical industry, but the quality of healthcare and the results of that healthcare have continued to go down to this day.
Our allopathic model is a pill for an ill, right? And it's the easy way out. You've got a problem, you've got a symptom, take a pill for it. You have a disease, take a pill for it. And even in medicine, that's how we're taught.
We are a society in which we want solution immediately and at least involvement possible. So, you have a high sugar, you take the pill that brings the sugar down. You have high cholesterol, you take the pill that brings that down. But, you can achieve the same goal, of course, changing lifestyle by embracing a diet in which you have less glucose or sugars in general, or fat intake, and that will do the trick by the same kind of efficiency. But it takes changes that we're not willing to make anymore.
Our hardest work as a doctor is actually in making the diagnosis. So we're, the best doctor out there is the best diagnostician. It's someone who can name what's going on. And that's what a diagnosis is taking this collection of symptoms and putting a name to it. And then once that's done, that's the hard work. Now there's a pill for that name. And that's really how medicine is done, and that's the easy way out.
We are on the point in which the life expectancy of the next generation is lower than the previous one ever happened in human history. And again, we have a tremendous responsibility here to stop these epidemics. We change the environment, and I don't want to be politically incorrect, but clearly, pollution and global warming and, globalization of lifestyle and massive production of foods comes with a price.
The problem with the current food system is that we've got a medical industry that acts as if food didn't matter. The average physician gets 19 hours of education in nutrition in their entire medical training. And we've got a food system that acts like your health didn't matter. Most of our food companies are focused on making profits more than on keeping us healthy. So in the midst of that, we have a crisis. We have a food system that is saturated with pesticides and hormones and antibiotics and GMOs and chemicals and added sugars, and that is devoid of fiber and vitamins and minerals and nutrients and prebiotics and probiotics and all the things that we need for a healthy digestion and a healthy body and a healthy life.
I'm not advocating we have to go back in the cave and live the caveman, lifestyle. That would be unthinkable. But as we should, acknowledge that, for example, if I use a cell phone 10 hours a day, my risk to develop brain cancer will increase. And the only thing that I have to do is to use wisely the phone rather than say, I'm not going to use the phone anymore. By the same token, there are few changes in lifestyle that will do the trick. Question being, are we ready to really change the state of mind that the easy fix is not a way to go? Because that will come always with a price. I'm not sure.
And in this context, no wonder 2/3 of our population is overweight or obese. 1/3 of our kids are expected to get diabetes in their lifetime. We have 8 million people a year dying of cancer, 14 million a year dying of heart disease, and all of this could be prevented. We know how to do so much better. We have studies showing that over half of the medical spending in the world today is on chronic disease treatment, and most of that, 80% or more of that, is fueled by what we eat.
Someone starts on, beta blocker, someone starts on metformin, 6 years later, they're on half a dozen to a dozen. Just your experience of how these pills start to stack.
One example I could use is a person who went to the doctor and had their blood pressure monitored. There's a syndrome known as white coat hypertension, when if you're in the doctor's office and you're getting measured, your blood pressure is going to be higher at that point than it might be on a day-to-day basis.
I hear patients who come to me after been to so many doctors, and my heart just goes out to them, because sometimes the things that they're complaining of is really not rocket science. It really is not that complicated.
And so that particular person got a blood pressure medication. That blood pressure medication made him lightheaded, and he fell down. His caregivers thought that he had a seizure, so he was placed on a seizure medication. That seizure medication caused depression, so then he was placed on an antidepressant.
It really needs someone to just take time and ask why. Why is this person having this symptom? Why are they also having this other symptom? And this other symptom, how are they related? Could they be related in one individual? Absolutely they have to be. You're one person. Everything you have, everything you're complaining of comes from you.
Sometimes the antidepressant made him more agitated, and so then he was placed on an antipsychotic medication. The antipsychotic medication resulted in him having gaining weight and increasing his likelihood of diabetes. So then he was placed on a diabetic medication. And this was just a typical story that I would see, and I would just draw a map of all of this that happened, and I would say, why was this person placed on this medication in the first place? And a lot of times, they didn't need to be on it.
If I can't figure out how they're linked, then I'm not really sure how I can call myself a doctor. And my oath said first to do no harm, and I get frustrated because most of these patients are taking things that actually are causing more harm while masking and taking away a symptom. And I don't think that's what we're here to do. I think they're looking at us for answers. This is their last hope, their last resort.
So one of the natural things that we ask ourselves as we find ourselves as scientists or physicians or consumers for that matter, a patient that's got an illness is, well, this sounds really bad to take chemotherapy. It sounds really bad to do anything allopathic at this point. And frankly, it does sound bad, and it's never getting you towards health. If you do utilize a pharmaceutical agent, see it as a Band-Aid, see it as a stepping stone as best case scenario, and quickly find out what is the foundation of life you're missing.
I think conventional medicine is really failing us at treating root causes of chronic disease. It's fantastic for emergency medicine. If you get hit by a car, please don't come see me. But it is really not doing a good job at picking up when someone's insulin is on the rise and saying, okay, maybe in 10 years you're going to become diabetic, But you know what? Your blood glucose levels look good. So just go home and do exactly what you're doing. Your diet has nothing to do with it, you know, and they're being told this over and over again. And then it's almost too late. It's so hard to fix a problem when it's been there for 20 years.
And what we see again and again is our patients come into our center with all kinds of different philosophies and perspectives. A lot of them, I'd say the majority of them, have come in to our clinic only after they've failed everything that allopathic medicine can do. They've been through every treatment known to man, whether it was because they had a seizure disorder or they have cancer, whatever they're coming in when they've exhausted all allopathic options, they're told there's nothing else, you're just going to have to live the rest of your life like this. And the rational humans across all socioeconomic and education levels often say, no, that's an irrational response to I have a problem, there's no solution. Well, when in history has there ever been no solution, right? We may not know the solution, we need to go after it.
It's just like personality, you know, for someone to change at age 50, it's pretty hard, you're stuck in your ways. And same with the body, the liver, the organs. When they're compromised, it's so much better if we could have prevented it to begin with.
And so the first thing that I tell everybody is have hope, most of all in yourself, because you have drive for life. You are made from the fabric of drive for life. If you believe Einstein and all these crazy physicists out there, there's no such thing as the time continuum. Time is warped, gravity is warped, everything's in this quantum physics weird state. Now, if you picture yourself there, and there is no time, and there's no real linearity to this age where we're born and we age 78 years and we die at an average age, that's the linear belief system. If we exit out of that and say there's no time and there's infinite amount of information and truth that we live in called nature, then I need to ask myself, future self, 1 year out, 2 year out, 5 year out, what did I do to get healthy? And just listen to yourself. And that sounds goofy, it sounds hippie, it sounds woo-woo, it works over again. Ask yourself, what am I missing? It's simple. It's not some chemical, it's not some technology that you're missing. It's some fundamental connection to nature. And listen. And it may take you by surprise, the answer. You may need to start breathing. Most Americans don't breathe well. You just might be dehydrated. I'd say 80% of the diseases that we see out there could be cured instantly if we could rehydrate the inside of your cells right now. And so you might just need to hydrate better. You might need to sleep better. Most Americans carry around a 20,000-hour sleep debt by the time they're 40. We are not doing the fundamental basics that even a non-scientist knows. And we be silent and we say, what are we doing that we really need to change?
And so if you can go back and really start addressing those root causes, you can now, you know, forget the pill for an ill model and really understand and cure that disease. And a lot of those things that are going to address those root causes are going to be lifestyle changes. Their dietary changes, their stress management, their sleep, all of the basic things are amazingly powerful in really rebalancing some of those, what we call biochemical imbalances that result in disease.
From the PhD world to the MD world, there is a very stark contrast. So what's it like going from research to clinical medicine and taking what you applied and trying to put it in people's lives?
Yeah, the challenge of going from research to clinical medicine is that people are people. People are individuals and they're messy. So in the lab, you can control all the variables. You can actually, set up the experiment and do it exactly what you want, change the thing you're testing and control everything else. Even when you work if you work in animal models or molecular models, you can control everything. It's exciting and fun and you can learn things very quickly. Now, if you try to apply that to people, and you say, hey, you should change your diet, and they'll go, they might not. It's not easy. You can't control all the variables, and people live in a real world, and many things happen to them. And even if they do try to eat right, they might have a stressful day that day that's going to throw them off. Things always happen. And so nothing is perfect when you work in the clinical world, and you really do the best that you can with what you have. It's very different in that respect.
There is not a person that I know of who doesn't know someone who is suffering from a chronic disease? And when we say chronic disease, let's not talk abstract terms. Let's name them. We know people who have dementia. We know people who have Parkinson's. Or worse yet, we have people who have depression and anxiety and obesity and diabetes or autoimmune diseases, or worse yet, cancer, heart diseases. We all see this happening day in, day out. This has to stop. Our healthcare system was designed for infectious diseases and acute care. It was never designed to take care of chronic diseases. It was designed for episodic sickness, and now is dealing with chronic sickness. And to me, it is a crime to give these people the drugs that absolutely do not cure any diseases.
So what would you say to someone whose doctor isn't hearing this, right? Isn't understanding that there's a better way to look? And what would you tell them to do? What would you tell them, maybe, how do you share this information with their doctor?
So one thing I want to say to people is that your doctor is trying to help you, and your doctor, most doctors really care about you and want you to get better, but they don't know what they don't know. If they've been in practice for 10 years, then their information may be 30 years outdated from what they learned in medical school. I would recommend really taking charge of your own health, doing your own research, seeking a functional medicine practitioner or an integrative practitioner that may be more up to speed on some of these innovative things if you need to. Really invest in your health and invest in yourself. A lot of times people will say, this doctor's not on my insurance, they cost $100. But really, your health is going to be with you forever. You only have one body, right? You have to live somewhere. And so making that investment in yourself is going to be a key to your long-term health. Another thing I want to say to people is if they don't have support from their healthcare professionals, their doctors, there's a lot of things you can do on your own, such as changing your diet or potentially trying some supplements that are low risk. These are things that you can do on your own. You can always meditate and de-stress. And nobody needs to tell you to do that. No, you don't need to have somebody with a medical degree to tell you to do that. You can do that right on your own.
Our current healthcare model is a sick care system, not one based on actual health. The incentives are all wrong. The insurance companies make billions of dollars bundling diagnosis codes so they can get more money or case value from the taxpayer or the employers who are paying for the plans. There's no wonder why the costs keep rising. And let's be clear about this. There's no question that trauma care is essential and that we're great at it. But what we've been exploring in this series is true health, how we can get healthy and stay that way, and how we can avoid expensive drugs, procedures, and surgeries that are bankrupting our resources and often not really fixing anything. This understanding of how health actually works is changing the lens through which we look. Here's some key takeaways from all this. Pills and prescriptions are usually used to suppress symptoms. Symptoms are your body's way of saying there's an issue. Focus on the root cause, not just the symptoms. Take charge of your doctor's visits. Be involved in your own health care. Don't demand a pill. Demand answers to the root cause. So what's the future of all this? If we had a crystal ball, what would we see happening 10 years from now? New tests, new drugs and procedures are already spinning off from this microbiome revolution. University labs and drug companies are scrambling to be on the right side of history. So what does this potentially look like? Check out what our healthcare professionals are saying. It applies to all of us, our families, our health, and our future.
The microbiome is the next frontier in medicine. Understanding it and optimizing it are going to be critical to solving so many of our healthcare issues. People don't think that their gut flora relates to obesity or type 2 diabetes, but it does. You can literally transplant fecal matter from a thin person to a diabetic person and reverse their diabetes. You can take fecal matter from a normal kid and put it in an autistic kid and their behavior changes.
The other thing I realize is that a lot of times the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea, right? And most organizations, most companies, most scientists will not typically try crazy ideas. They're risky. You try a crazy idea and it fails, it's a ding on your reputation. But of course, if you're not trying crazy ideas, if you're trying the expected next thing, then you're stuck with incrementalism.
The thing that's really exciting to me is that the walls are coming down. We now know that with the microbiome that we can't hold on to the same paradigm of disease we had when the microbiome is affecting autism and obesity and cancer and autoimmune disease and allergies and depression. I mean, you can't explain that with our current scientific paradigm.
Of recent focus, it's really been in the longevity business. How do we extend the healthy human lifespan? I believe that in the next 10, 20 years, we're going to be able to add another 10, 20, 30 years of healthy life onto a person. You know, my mission, my vision is how do you make 100 years old and you 60? So you have the aesthetics, the mobility, the cognition at 100 that you had at 60. So it's not about just living longer, it's about living longer in a healthier, more vibrant lifestyle.
So all of a sudden the world isn't flat anymore, it's round, and yet most of us are still operating practically and theoretically as if the earth was flat. And the microbiome is going to blow that all up, and we're going to understand how to treat people very differently.
We all want breakthroughs, but it comes at a price of trying all kinds of things. And so I think this is the exciting world we're in, where we can crowdsource now. We can say, you know, okay, traditional industry, you're not going to try something crazy, but these 100 or 1,000 teams around the world who don't know better not to try these crazy ideas will, and if one works, we all win.
There's so much information coming out of kind of the genetic soup of the microbiome and how that's impacting our health. What's your take on these discoveries of the microbiome and what the promise is for human health and longevity?
What we're finding is that the body is extraordinarily complex. What we used to think of as basic systems and the way things basically worked, the better our tools are to be able to monitor, read, understand, the more we're realizing the body is a very complex ecosystem, right? We're a collection of on the order of 100 billion cells, but we've got more bacterial, viral, fungal cells in our body than we do human cells. And those cells represent computer code. I think of the body as code and hardware, and a lot of the code is your 3.2 billion nucleotides that run your DNA, that are your DNA, that run who you are, how you are.
But in the last 5 to 10 years, neural networks have made a big comeback because now we have computers that can build very, very large, complicated, multi-layered kinds of neural networks. And we have the kind of data that can actually train these neural networks to do the kinds of fancy things that you'd expect AI to do.
But there's a whole bunch of other code going on inside, on your skin, in your gut, in your flora, is code that determines your health, your blood chemistry makeup, your attitude, your neuroscience. So we are a extraordinary collection, and it's just now that we're beginning to understand the relationship between your gut flora, your microbiome, and disease, who you are, your personality, your attitudes even. So I think this is just starting to become understandable with our ability to gather, process, and draw conclusions from big data given machine learning and AI capabilities.
AI is absolutely essential in order for us to solve the healthcare problem that we currently have. It's just impossible to solve these problems without AI. So the AI machine can take this massive context of information that's already been fed into it and look at the current case and start finding what are the different possibilities based on which we could have arrived at this particular situation. So there could be 5, 10, 15 possible, top options for how to proceed. And then, you start giving it more information. You say, hey, you know what, this person's eye looks red. So, maybe you eliminate a few things. And this person seems to be not able to sleep. So you eliminate a few more things, and so on and so forth until you arrive at the final thing, right? So that interaction between the doctor and the patient to capture the latest, state of their body and their mind is still something that I believe a human being is needed for. Okay, so there's a lot of interpersonal interactions that only a human being is able to explore and extract out of a person. And once you get that information, you feed it into a computer and say, hey, look, given all of these situations, what do you think? And then, a computer can probably come back and say, have you thought about this? And we've done a bunch of studies where it's shown that, a computer can provide an option that a human doctor might not have considered. And that's always, an addition, like a value-added thing that a machine, I think, will do more of in the future.
So in the future, do you see the home as being some sort of smart home that'll just take your poop and analyze it every morning and assess your blood and all these types of data points that you're just constantly feeding your own machine learning system that's accompanying you in your life?
Totally. I even now I think about, why do I have to send my stool sample over to the lab? Why can't I have a smart toilet that takes my stool every day and crunches the information out of it and sends it over to the cloud, right? So from the smart toilet to the cloud, and then the AI machine in the cloud is looking at all of these samples over time and over a population and putting things together and telling me what to do next, what to eat, what to exercise, and where I need to improve in terms of my mental balance and so forth. So all of that's absolutely where I'd like to go.
How far are we from that smart toilet?
I think the smart toilet will happen in the next 5 or so years, I would say. It has to do with how well we can miniaturize the complex equipment we have in labs today to make it process at the level that we need in a home toilet. Now, it may not happen right where the toilet is. It may be kind of like your AC unit or something, which is down in the basement, right? It may have to be a unit somewhere down in the basement that processes everybody's information. But I think it's going to be possible to get it into a house in the next 5 years, in my opinion.
A lot of especially guys up in the ivory towers are saying, this is great, but we're not there yet. What can we deduce from what we can already use technologically? Because, the Jetsons are the Jetsons, but what can we do with this information right now?
Well, I think we can turn much of this data into recommendations for daily life. So foods that people can eat, supplements they can have, lifestyle changes that they need to make, right? Those kinds of things we believe we can already give the initial recommendations. Now, do we know everything that is to be known and actioned upon in the data? I don't think so. I think it's going to take a long time. But I think we have enough to make a difference in people's lives. And if you want, real proof of that, there's been a whole bunch of clinical trials that have shown that, a certain diet changes your microbiome in order to make you less prone to depression, for example. That's been shown. There's been studies that show the same thing for metabolic diseases and for arthritis and other kinds of autoimmune kinds of disorders. So those kinds of things are actionable. Now, it's still cutting edge, and these studies are only coming out in the last year, 2 years, 3 years. So these are, things that you need to be looking for and be at the forefront of, but these are things that I believe we can get started with right away.
I think what's happening right now is we're seeing this convergence of all of these technologies that were never before available. Massive computational power, sensors and networks to monitor what's going on in the body, the ability to do large-scale simulation on the cloud, the whole arena of rapid genomic sequencing and understanding how to read the transcriptome of cells, and then being able to then manipulate and edit those cells. The whole notion of not only reading DNA, but now being able to write and edit DNA is allowing us to go from a world of evolution by natural selection, which is Darwinism, a very slow process, to evolution by human direction, which is how do we move this faster and start to make the corrections that nature might make over 1 million years, but let's do it over the next decade or so.
We didn't even understand the magnitude of the microbiome until the recent past, when the technology allowed us to move from, what was our understanding of microbes. So whatever you can grow in a petri dish or see under a microscope, for us was the kingdom of microbes. We know now that we're looking at the tip of a much more complex and bigger iceberg when we were able to use the technology that we developed during the Human Genome Project to really become culture independent. And therefore now we understand the complexity of this ecosystem that not only live with us and within us, but co-evolve with us. So we have been engineered for the past 2 million years as the consequence of, this interplay between us and the microbiome.
In the last 50 years, we've been in a world where one size fits all. You have this diagnosis, you take this drug. And of course, that's fine when you have no other options. But we're now living in a world where it's not just a generic diagnosis, it's me. I can specifically know what are the 3.2 billion nucleotides in my genome. I can know exactly what my gut flora is. I can know how I process a particular drug or not. And we're heading towards a world of super hyper-personalized medicine, where I can actually give myself a particular drug, or you can think of even a microbiome infusion or modification, a particular microbe as a drug, and then understand how it impacts my life. I can measure my blood chemistries, I can measure my physiology.
I believe that we are creating a new system for primary care, and that's my mission, and that's the work that we're doing, and we're creating a system that helps people live their healthiest lives, doesn't just help them sort of manage disease once they get it. And so I think that there's just massive opportunity through technology, through smart data analytics, to codify this approach to track outcomes in real time, which we do. We have data engineers on our team and a PhD in data science who's helping us track outcomes. Our outcomes are awesome. I'm so excited to be able to use a business word, scale this type of medicine, because you shouldn't have to be extraordinarily wealthy or so desperate that you're willing to pay anything to get access to a new way of doing things. You just shouldn't. You should have it for everyone. And so I think accessibility is really the promise and the future, and that's what we're working on.
Now brings this to the next level, in which the communication is not happening between one species and the host, but trillions of microorganisms, thousands and thousands of species that crosstalk with each other, and then they crosstalk with us. And there's dynamic, because they change all the time, and change because of our lifestyle. You eat one way and you have a certain microbiome. You live in a different place and you have a different microbiome. So that's where really we start to understand, what really is the magnitude of this new, paradigm of science that was totally oblivious to us.
I also believe that microbiome diagnostic approaches are going to become routine in the next 10 to 10 years. I think you go to your doctor's office and they're going to do a sequence and tell you, okay, you picked up XYZ on your last trip, or you drank too much 2 weeks ago. And I'm excited at the thought that the field is headed in that direction, because I think it's going to be brought into personalized medicine and be used more widely in medicine in general.
That's a exciting future world for us, one where it's completely personalized and it's designed for me, and I can monitor how I'm doing minute to minute, day to day.
I think what excites me the most about medicine right now is that two things. We have the technology to rapidly expand a type of medicine, this approach called functional health, that we just didn't have before. And what I'm so excited about, and what my work is about, is bringing it out of the world in which it's been, which is like a provider here working with a handful of people and a doctor there working with a handful of people, and truly creating a new system.
I do believe that with time, as we're able to do much longer studies, and if we get to the point where every time you go for your annual checkup, they collect a stool sample and they're able to say, wow, you picked up this bug, and 5 years from now you have XYZ disease. I do believe that we will get to the point where we're gathering that data.
This field is a scientific frontier. It's not surprising because the connection between microbes and their hosts, all animals, all plants, and animals including humans, the linkage is very deep.
There's more communications going from our gut to our brain than the other way around. And what are those communications saying? Well, those bacteria, they're making neurotransmitters. My God. They're making GABA, they're making serotonin, and they're sending those neurotransmitters to our brain. There's more neurotransmitters coming from our gut than we make in our brain. Is that not the personality? Does that not imply that maybe we should be dealing with the personality of a person's gut when they've got a chronic illness? Just a thought.
Microbes were on the planet before we were, and every organism that evolved had to take into account those microbes. So we know that there's a deep linkage, and what's I think exciting for me is how many different kinds of scientists are entering the world. Some of them are gastroenterologists, some of them are neuroscientists, cardiologists, computer scientists, chemists, electrical engineers. It's attracting all kinds of talent to work on the different scientific questions.
So what if a doc had the ability to take a simple sample and to get systems biology information about their patient that says, here's 30 different metabolites that we've looked at in their blood, blood chemicals, and say, it's not just that your cholesterol's high or your blood sugar's high. Here's 10 other chemicals we hadn't thought about. And these tell us, you've got a deficiency of manganese. Oh my God, I never would have figured that out myself. I would never be able to do that. But what if I've got a computer program that says, all this really boils down to, it's a mineral deficiency, or it's a mineral deficiency coupled with a microbiome imbalance. And you fix those two things, and the whole system will come back into health again.
Well, my excitement comes from the fact that we're seeing more and more embracement of what they call integrative medicine, and it's in many medical school curriculums. It's in over 50 medical schools curriculums.
We're most excited about the basic biology, about basically discovering how the microbiome or microbes in our gut or environment work with our immune system and our nervous system. So essentially trying to understand what is the fundamental aspects of just our own biology.
I think the excitement that we see for someone like myself and others who see that integrative medicine, nutritional sciences are becoming more and more embraced is the fact that it's patient and consumer driven, because consumers and patients see that it works. And despite the prejudices and politics by the doctors who have been around for many years, I think that the demand by the public has created the fact that people need to be more open-minded to it. And I think that and the younger generation becoming more interested has really led to this paradigm shift that we're seeing today.
And so I believe that in a reasonable amount of time, maybe a few years, 5 years to 10 years, that when we go for our annual physicals, we won't just give blood, but we'll also give a stool sample. And that'll be part of our medical record, just to get this information as a population to know whether or not particular changes in the microbiome correlate with disease.
With this new understanding of the microbiome, we're having a couple of moments of reflection as a community of humans. And one of them is, since we hadn't really fully appreciated who they were, what they were doing, and their own sensitivities to chemicals in the world around them, we didn't even know that we were harming them as much as we are when we do routine things that we hadn't even thought much about. Using antibiotics is one obvious example, but eating in a particular way, unlike the kinds of diets that they may prefer, exposing ourselves to chemicals in the world that are of our own making, that they weren't particularly well tuned to address, and all of the other lifestyle issues.
And one of the emerging themes from microbiome research from the community is that our own genome isn't sufficient to induce or to promote all the different functions or activities of the human body, that we rely on inputs or signals from the microbiome. And it's really fascinating to see how bacteria in our gut provide signals or cues to our development and function just as our own genome does. And many people have suggested, and I do agree, that we have two genomes, our own and a microbial genome.
And I believe we're living in a day and age where there is no problem we cannot solve. It's really a matter of bringing to focus the right capital, the right intellect, the right mindset, and then, unless it's against the laws of physics, getting people to actually pound that problem into submission. The near future, not the far future, in the next 5 years, is you're going to give an AI permission to watch everything you eat, monitor what's going on through your day, understand what's going on in your blood chemistries, understand what's going on in your microbiome, and then guide you to optimize your health. To say, Peter, actually don't eat that, eat this instead, or based upon your blood glucose levels, your vitamin D levels, whatever it might be, I want you to go and take this particular supplement. So we're going to go from sort of a do whatever you want mindset to giving you the option to do what's best for you and know without any question that this is what's best for you. So I believe we're all going to eventually have a version of Jarvis from Iron Man, an AI that is your best friend that's doing everything it can to maximize your health and happiness in that moment. And so giving that AI eventually all the data possible, both your genetics, your microbiome, your metabolome, everything, is what's going to enable you to live the longest, healthiest life and have the most enjoyment.
One of the key elements is to really follow patients from the very beginning, ideally from birth until they develop the problem, so that we can follow the journey that they take to go from genetic predisposition to disease. And at the same token, you can see the changes during the time of the microbiome composition and function, so you can interrogate yourself and say, okay, this is what happened a few months before that they developed disease, that the microbiome switched from this composition, this other composition, its function went from here to there, this specific metabolic pathway were activated. And these are all predictors that down the road, on that specific genetic background, these people that will develop disease. That's what is necessary.
There are a few really interesting buckets of research. Certainly chronic gut autoimmune disease is a really interesting area. There's also the interplay between microbiome and metabolic function, and so obesity and metabolic disease is a really interesting area for future research.
Two things that make me excited about the microbiome. One, from a translational standpoint, the microbiome has huge potential because it's as if we have identified a new organ in our body that we maybe didn't know is so important and so influential.
There's also an emerging literature on the relationship between the microbiome and immune oncology, and I think there, the idea that, by supporting a healthy microbiome, we may be helping patients with cancer is a really interesting new avenue for research.
We understand that it is involved in our health, in our physiology, in our nutrition, in our metabolism, in our immune response. And we also understand now that it is an organ that we can manipulate, right? Unlike any other organ in the human body, we can change the composition of the microbiome using prebiotic, antibiotic diet. And so we have an intervention target. And so the translational potential is tremendous.
It's necessary that we have to move forward with new models that we didn't have before. Because, again, microbiome composition and function is very specific from each individual. Imagine the difference from one individual species to another individual species. So all the studies that we've done in biology have been based on animal models that probably will help little to really answer the question what the microbiome can do to human beings in terms of, generate the condition to develop diseases.
How do we reverse everything? How do we get out of this disaster? 4% of the human population in 1960 had a chronic disease. 4%. Today, 46% of our children have a chronic disease. It's too ridiculous, it's too sad, it's too tragic on so many levels. So what do we do? Can we get those building blocks, and then we can get them back so fast?
There are a number of new companies pursuing programs looking to enter the clinic with new treatments that target the microbiome for supporting immune function of cancer patients. And there's a lot of really interesting academic work supporting the idea that that might be an effective avenue to explore.
There's documentaries being made right now, and there's science articles coming out right now. If you just go strict organic, where you do everything you can do to not let glyphosate touch the soil and the food that you can bring into your home, within 3 weeks, we see reversal of diseases that have afflicted families for decades. 3 weeks. That's grace. That's the power of the fabric we're made from. You screw up your whole life, and then you decide to do it right for 3 weeks, and everything improves. And don't we see this over and over again in our life? Forgiveness happens to humans. And when you forgive somebody, it changes a broken relationship that's been decades of toxicity and brokenness. We are being forgiven by nature today for what we've done.
So the question is, are we now going to find that our lifestyle, our modern lifestyle, is not well tuned to the needs of our microbial friends on whom we now realize we depend? We weren't talking to them, we weren't listening, and it's well time that we do. I think we will find out that it's not all doom and gloom. I think we will find out that they were far more adaptable and resilient than you might have thought. That's what they do. And we will find out that yet there are some things that we can and should change to make it easier for them to maintain the kinds of communities that best serve us.
A healthy today and a healthy future. This is the collective vision for all of us. You just have to interconnect with it through your microbiome. It's crazy to think the simplicity of living a life to feed the inner life inside you seems ahead of its time. A new idea. Learning that the microbial community within us is processing our connections to our immunity, our liver, the heart, the mind, the planet, and the entire universe around us is amazing. Again, the symphony of life that's been the undercurrent that we've been missing the whole time. This is your last chance to get the whole series along with the extended interviews and resources. Don't miss out on this and kick yourself later. It's easy to get the entire set. Just click the button below this video and you'll get access to all of the documentary series when you purchase it, plus the powerful bonuses and resources, all available one last time at a discounted event-only price today. Look, if you feel under the weather, if you're sick and you can't tell why, or if you suffer from some serious health ailment or some chronic disease, you owe this to yourself, don't you? The microbiome holds the key to the future of personalized healthcare. And finally, we have the answer to healing and eradicating disease. We've known for decades that this one-size-fits-all model is broken. So let me show you a new way. I encourage you to share this with your friends and family. And when you purchase the complete set of Interconnected today, you'll not only have lifetime access to everything you've seen in these episodes, including video, audio, and text transcripts, you'll also get all the complimentary guides on how to use natural medicine for specific conditions. You'll get the extended interviews on the topics that weren't covered in the episodes, and the live Q&As with our esteemed experts from the series. But most of all, you're making an investment in your health, one that will repay you for years to come. We've covered a lot of groundbreaking health science in this series, and microbiome research continues in labs around the world. How you use this knowledge is up to you. I want to thank all the doctors, scientists, and health professionals in Interconnected for their amazing work, their commitment, and for being so generous with their time. What they gave and continue to give us is invaluable. Meeting and talking with them, for me, was a true adventure. I love this stuff. We've amassed amazing resources for you in the companion guide, along with other books and videos for you to explore and enjoy. Of course, you can replay all the episodes as there's so much important stuff to pick up on and absorb with each viewing. We've also made the director's cut of the full-length videos available in the Platinum Kit. There's so much to know that we've helped chunk it down into usable information that you could apply directly in your life right now. Lastly, I want to thank you for your support and for going deep within and opening yourself to this new hope for wellness. Now, go follow your microbiome to good health and a long life. I'm Dr. Pedram Shojai, and I want to thank you. Please stay interconnected.